We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome to Conspiracy Corner Podcast, everyone. This is Abe, your host. It is 7:51 a.m., July 17th. Just got off work. It was kind of gloomy out. Now it looks like the sun's coming out a little bit. I guess where it's rolling on 8 a.m. It was a pretty chill night, so that's cool. No complaints. As far as updates, Sammy's birthday was yesterday. We didn't get to do anything, but we do have something planned for on our next day off. We're going to go hiking, and she wants a new video game controller. So, we'll probably go out to eat, maybe at Shakertown. I'm not sure. They got a restaurant there, or we might go somewhere else. I don't know. We'll be doing something after I get off work, so it'll be kind of in the early hours, so be breakfast at most places. But I don't know. We'll have fun either way. But as far as updates, nothing new's been happening. Just been working and podcasting. That's about all she wrote. Today's episode, I feel like, honestly, man, I've been on fire here lately. So if you guys think I have, as far as like heavy hitting episodes on heavy hitting subjects, personally, man, I feel like I've been hitting on some heavy stuff, putting out good info for you all. The ratings are good and stuff, but it does help to kind of hear you guys' input. If I'm, hitting on some good heavy subjects or whatever. I don't know. I've just had good energy here lately and stuff, so I've been putting out more podcasts. I do have like autoimmune deficiency, so I go through phases where I'll feel like crap for a couple weeks, and then sometimes I feel amazing. It's just kind of ups and downs with me, and I figure if I got the energy, I'm going to put out podcasts. But where we have been covering some darker, heavier stuff of just current events and current stuff that's going on, I do like to take a break from that and kind of do some lighter episodes like paranormal, ufology, stuff like that. And this is kind of like a ghost story of Johnny Cash, of all people. And I wanted to share this with you all because, for one, I love Johnny Cash. I'm a big fan. I've been a fan for years. I don't really like country, but I do like Johnny Cash. I like Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Jerry Lee Lewis, if you count him. That's about it as far as country. But that, and I like the paranormal. And this is an account out of his book, Cash, that I read, and I found it's an easy read because it's written, honestly, the way that he spoke. Because he wrote it. It's an autobiography, so I know there's plenty of biographies out there about him, but honestly, why read a biography when you can read literally his life story through his own words? He did write another autobiography that was Man in Black, but that was years ago, so he wrote Cash to kind of, I don't know, tell you what like happened after Man in Black and kind of yeah, just he felt like there was more to say. But this is his ghost account of a haunted house that he owned in Jamaica called Cinnamon Hill. We'll get on with the show. All right, all right, all right. Before we get into the episode, I did make a episode already on Johnny Cash. It was some conspiracy stuff because I heard some silly goose, quote unquote, truther channel who was calling Johnny Cash a Freemason. And actually, I was like, I should probably call this dumb moron out. And so I made my episode on literally Johnny Cash's words on how he got denied from the Freemasons and how he literally hates Freemasons. So I will leave an episode to that in the link. If you go and if during the credits, if you're on YouTube, you can click on the link and watch the other episode. But yeah, people are dumb. Also, there's a silly story in that episode of Johnny Cash fighting an ostrich, so it's pretty fucking cool. But yeah, we'll get on with the show. Cinnamon's Hill has its own spirits, presences, and very personal memories. From the spot where I sit at this moment, on the veranda at the north end of the house, shaded by jasmine, 280 feet above sea level, I'm just a few feet away from the quiet, gentle room in which I recuperated from my most profound encounter with the medical profession. Emergency bypass surgery in 1988. It's the room through which people have been going to ground during hurricanes ever since the house was built in 1747. And what's now its bathroom was designed as both a hurricane shelter and a windbreak, constructed of limestone, 4 feet thick in the shape of a round-edged, slope-roofed wedge pointing north into the hurricane winds. It directs the fiercest forces of the storms down the side and up over the top of the house. It's very effective and, as far as I know, unique. I've never seen another like it anywhere in the world. John Carter's young wife, Mary, has painted the interior walls with tropical fishes. It's pretty dope. I kind of like beachy fish settings. Hurricanes, man. I was born and raised in Florida, and I've been through several. We never evacuated for hurricanes. We just fill up, obviously brand new, but my dad would go and buy like 2 or 3 brand new trash cans and fill them to the top with water. He had a generator, and we'd just tie everything down and ride them out, dude. Even closer to me, right at my feet, is another memory. The skin of the rogue crocodile I killed back in 1976. 11 feet and 560 pounds. A very tough, dangerous old creature. That's pretty fucking dope. One-Eyed Jack, we called him, in his prime. I put 3 bullets from a rusty 30-30 into his brain. Good shooting, even if I do say so myself. Over open sights in the dark, until he quit thrashing around and we were able to drag him into the airboat with us, where of course he came right back to life. Not a good moment, that. My friend, Ross Kananga, a full-blooded Seminole, and the professional in the affair, had to shoot him another 5 times with a pistol before he went quiet forever. We did the local wildlife a big favor that night, and we too benefited. Crocodile tail meat is delicious when you cut it into thin slices, roll it in meal and spices, and fry it like a fish. Now, I have had gator. I had fried gator down in Florida. It was actually literally a restaurant called Gators, with my buddy Andy Pittman. Actually, he has a YouTube channel, Andy Pants. Go check him out. That The 90s Are Rad, I think, is his new channel. I don't regret killing One-Eyed Jack, but I don't kill anything anymore. I just don't want to. A lot has been created on this veranda, in this spot. Billy Graham wrote parts of 3 of his books here. Sorry, Cash. He always kind of did turn me off with the Christianity stuff. And it's one of my own favorite writing places. And then, of course, it's possible that some of the descendants of the Barretts of Wimpole Street, the family of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, the original owners of the property, wrote some of their journals, prose, and poetry here. Certainly, they experienced life here, and death. Many of them are entombed in their own private cemetery in a lovely spot down the hill from the house. One of my favorite places in the world. Every one of the men, women, and children buried there lived and died in the house I now call mine. On John Carter's first visit to the cemetery, when he'd just turned 4, he said something to June, as she opened the gate, that she didn't understand at first. "Mama, my brother Jamie is here." She was mystified, but then, as she was looking around, she bent down to read the smallest of all the tombs, one of those heartbreaking, tiny memorials you always know at a glance marks the grave of a young child. The stone was worn on one side, so she couldn't make out the last number and the birth and death dates. But at the first 3 numbers of both were 177 dash. And the young Barrett's Christian name was James. She still didn't understand, but there it was, and there it is today. Perhaps we were meant to come here. I certainly felt a powerful tug when I first saw the house in 1974. I was rambling around the hills in a 4-wheel drive with John Rowlands, who owned the house and all the land around it, including Rose Hall, the greatest of all the great houses. As soon as we came up on Cinnamon Hill, I fell in love with it. It was in disrepair, but basically sound. A playboy was living there in just one room, with one electric light and one maid, and immediately I got the idea that I could renovate it into a wonderful vacation home. John thought that was a good idea too. By the way, Johnny Cash has kind of got split personalities. There's John and then there's Cash. Like, it's crazy. But he wouldn't consider selling it to me. But he is talking about John Rowlands right here, though. John thought it was a good idea too, but he wouldn't consider selling it to me. He wanted it for himself in later years. If I wanted to fix it up, he said, I should go ahead and do that, and I could use it whenever I wanted. I went ahead, and by the end of 1975, it was ready for our first Christmas in Jamaica. I'd never liked the idea of living in someone else's house, though, and at that point, I really didn't like it. I badly wanted to own the place myself. By the time John Rowlands and I have become good friends, we'd taken to each other on first meeting, being of like mind and similar roots. He too came from cotton fields. He'd had the same kind of life in Georgia as I'd had in Arkansas. And so, he'd shared some of his secrets with me. The relevant one was about his approach to closing a really big deal, which is something he does quite well. He was already a successful businessman in 1975, and he's come a long way since then. He operates in a financial sphere way beyond mine. Last time I checked, his umbrella company owned about 200 enterprises, everything from billboards in Mexico to truck lines in the United States to security services all over the world. For a while, he was a lieutenant governor of Delaware, his home base today. I'm godfather to his son Michael. To close the deal successfully, he told me he'd put on his dark suit, his quote-unquote sincere suit, he called it, and make his pitch. And when he was done, he always said, quote, if we can do that, if we can do that, I sure would appreciate it. Now I don't own a dark suit, and didn't then, in all black outfits in the Benjamin Franklin or riverboat gambler style, my favorite kind of dress-up outfit at the time, are anything but sincere suits. So I left out that part of the formula when I sat down on the porch with John right after Christmas. You know, John, I spent a lot of money on this place this year, I began. I've got more invested in it than I should for just a place to come once in a while for a nice vacation. We've hired people to work here, got the place fixed up, got the grounds fixed up. We're about to put in a swimming pool. I think it's time you sold me this place. No, he said, I can't do that. He still wanted it for himself. I pressed. Well, we've just about got to have this place. Still no deal. You've got it every time you need it. Just come on down, he said. Look, John, you know better than that. It just wouldn't be right to do it that way. I wouldn't feel right fixing it up and having it still be yours. We've got our hearts here now. We've gotten dirt on our hands around here. We love this place. We need to buy it from you. I don't know, he said. Well, say you sold it. If you did, what would you have for it? He told me his figure. Bingo. We were into it now. I was halfway there, at least. I thought about his price, concluded that it had some give in it, and made him my offer. Then I looked him straight in the eye and said, as soberly and sincerely as possible, if we can do that, John, I sure would appreciate it. He stared at me for a second, then started laughing. All right, he said, we've got a deal. And so we did, and so June and I began the process of merging our lives with that of our new house. The past is palpably present in and around Cinnamon Hill, the reminders of other times and of other generations everywhere. Some obvious, some not. For more than a century, this was a sugar plantation worked by thousands of slaves who lived in clusters of shacks all over the property. All that remains of those people now, the metal hinges from their doors and nails from their walls, lies hidden in the undergrowth on the hillsides or in the soil just below the manicured sod of the golf course that loops around my house. I doubt that the vacationers playing those beautiful links have any idea, any concept of the kind of life that once teemed where they walk. Though perhaps some do, you never know. I've been out with a metal detector and found all kinds of things. A lot has happened here. Man, just a little side note. That reminds me, man, a lot of these golf courses, you want to hear something horrifying and basically sickening when it comes to like Native American history. A lot of the old golf courses in the United States were built over Native American mounds. That's why they're literally mounds that people are playing golf on. Is that not insane? For anyone who's interested in like Tartaria and cover up of the past, like talk about effed up, man. Covering up ancient mounds and using them as golf courses, like, oh, that'd be neat to play golf on, you know. That's screwed up, right? I don't know, as someone who's been to like Serpent Mound and stuff, like, and someone who's, you know, got two tribes of native in them, like, I don't know, that's just, it's sad, disgusting, really. There are ghosts, I think. Many of the mysteries reported by guests and visitors to our house, and many that we ourselves experienced, can be explained by direct physical evidence. a tree limb brushing against the roof of the room in which Waylon and Jessie kept hearing such strange noises, for instance. But there have been incidents that defy conventional wisdom. Mysterious figures have been seen. A woman, a young boy, at various times by various people over the years. Once a woman appeared in the dining room when 6 of us were present. We all saw her. She came through the door leading to the kitchen. A person in her early 30s, I'd say, wearing a full-length white dress, and proceeded across the room toward the double doors in the opposite wall, which were closed and locked. She went through them without opening them. And then, from the other side, she knocked. Rat-tat-tat, rat-tat. We never had any trouble from these souls. They mean us no harm, I believe, and we're certainly not scared of them. They just don't produce that kind of emotion. For example, when Patrick Carr was staying here, working with me on this book, he was awakened in the middle of the night by a knock on the door next to his bed. Rat-tat-tat-tat. And was struck by the thought, oh, that's just the ghost. Don't worry about it. Go back to sleep. He didn't even mention the incident until the following evening after we'd told him, for the first time, about the lady we'd seen in the dining room, and that same knock we'd heard. At that point, his wife revealed that she had the exact identical experience. Same knock, same reaction. They'd both interpreted the event as such a natural occurrence that they hadn't even told each other about it. So we're not frightened. The only really frightening story about Cinnamon Hill belongs in the realm of the living and serves to remind me that some of them, just a few of them, a tiny minority, are much more dangerous than all the dead put together. And that's it. As far as like the paranormal and stuff. But we do have a little more extra time today, so I will do one more ghost story with you all to finish it off. And we'll call it wraps. We'll call it a day, so we'll get on with the next story. By the way, before we get into this next story, I would like to thank the new subscriber to the YouTube channel. It did not notify me what your actual name is, so I can't shout you out, but thank you for subbing. Please share, and that goes to anyone who subscribes to the YouTube channel, which is just Conspiracy Corner Podcast. This is my second channel. Sadly, my old channel got too many strikes. It never officially got shut down, knock on wood, but I can no longer post on there. So I went from 211 subscribers to 21 subscribers. So I'm basically starting from scratch on YouTube. So please share. Please like. Tell your friends about it. Maybe they'll sub. For audio listeners, if you want to listen to audio only, which some people do because it takes less energy battery-wise on your phone if you're working and listening, you can find us on Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Radio Public, Google Podcast, and yeah, the Isle of Man, for some reason, is our biggest foreign listeners besides the United States. So shout out to the Isle of Man, the country, like that's pretty dope. It's random. For some reason, I got a lot of fans out there, so cheers. But yeah, here's the bonus ghost story for you all. This is the romantic Inn by the Sea. It's the Inn by the Sea. It's Cape Elizabeth, Maine. He needed to get away from the pace of speaking engagements, even from his much-loved research. 4 days at the luxurious Inn by the Sea in Maine was to be his lesson in relaxation. He had just flown in from Chicago and was sitting in his armchair at home when Lydia handed him a copy of The Discerning Traveler. "Look, honey, they describe this inn as a romantic hideaway," she said. with a warm, inviting smile. "I'm ready for that," said Mark. Driving out of Boston on Thursday in July, Professor Mark Hardy found himself looking forward to the experience. By afternoon, he was driving his black Cherokee out on Cape Elizabeth along the Bowery Beach Road, eagerly anticipating his wife's arrival. Lydia would be joining him in a few hours. He wished that she had not had to give a test at summer school this afternoon so that they could have driven up together. "We work too hard. We must take the time to store up more good memories," she had said. She had read about the Cape and described its picturesque old buildings with her usual boundless enthusiasm. He saw several thriving family farms, spotted 2 state parks on the Cape, and noticed with amusement that the town had taken a former fort and turned it into a recreation area. Mark also liked Cape Elizabeth's red-roofed houses, the lighthouse, and the nearness of the water. Looking around him, he saw much that was typical of New England. His first glimpse of the inn by the sea came as something of a shock. Lydia had given him no idea of its size. It was an immense, gray-shingled complex bordering Crescent Beach State Park. Strolling into the marble-tiled lobby, he was surprised to see the walls decorated with original, oversized Audubon prints of coastal birds. Biology professor and occasional birder, Mark's spirits soared. He knew already that he was going to love this place. Lydia had reserved a very luxurious suite. It had contemporary furnishings, a living room with a window wall, a 2-story cathedral ceiling, and an oversized bath with a deep soaking tub big enough for 2. Picking up one of the brochures on the bedside table, Mark saw a picture of an outdoor pool, a tennis court, bicycles, and a boardwalk that he presumed led to the beach beyond the park. He lay down on the sofa to read it, and before long was obeying Lydia's admonition to relax. He was soon fast asleep. When he woke up, someone was kissing him. "I'm here, Sleeping Beauty," said his wife. They had a late dinner on the porch of the dining room, selecting a table with a view. Champagne and appetizers of grilled shrimp, served with fig and date chutney, preceded a tender duck entree. "Not at all bad for 2 teachers," said Mark. "I like this place. You're a woman of taste." "Aunt Margaret would have approved," said Lydia, whose aunt had left her a small inheritance. The next morning they went bicycling down Route 77 to the Portland Head Lighthouse, took the usual tourist pictures, and lunched at the Lobster Shack. Then they returned to the inn, pleasantly tired. On Saturday they cycled south to see Winslow Homer's studio at Prout's Neck. They saved Sunday, the 3rd day of their long weekend, for a lazy afternoon and evening out on the beach. Carrying a hamper with a picnic supper, Mark and Linda ambled along the boardwalk leading from the inn. When they emerged from the state park, they found not a rock-lined shore, but a magnificent sand beach stretching for miles beside the Atlantic. Mark wandered along near the water, watching for unusual shells and sea creatures. Lydia read a book on the area. She was a history teacher, and it amused him to hear her say things like, "I wish I could have lived back then," or "Wouldn't it be exciting to go through an experience like that?" "You mean like the French Revolution or the San Francisco Fire?" he would sometimes counter teasingly. "Well, what have you learned about Cape Elizabeth?" he asked now, sitting down on the sand. "I found out that the Jordans were a very prominent family here." "I'm sure they were, if they were your ancestors," quipped Mark, before their marriage. His wife had been Lydia Jordan. "I have no idea whether these particular Jordans were my ancestors or not, only that They were here in the 1630s and lived through 3 wars: the War of King Philip of Spain, King William's War, and Queen Anne's. They certainly suffered a long streak of misfortune, said Mark, but you sound as if it had just happened. You aren't very sympathetic. I feel sorry for them, she said indignantly. Just imagine, they had to leave during every war. Then, when they did come back in 1715, they were attacked by pirates. I'm glad they survived it, especially if they were your ancestors. It wouldn't surprise me if some of them were pirates. They settled all along the coast. Lydia made a wry face at him. Do you think Blackbeard ever got up beyond Philadelphia and New York? Mary asked. Of course he did. They said he caroused with his pirate friends at Newport and buried treasure on an island off the New England coast. If you didn't work all the time, we could go searching for it. Biologists would rather search for rare bugs, my dear, but tell me more. Fishing was big here in the 1800s. During the winter, men sailed to the Caribbean islands with cargoes of fish and lumber and brought back sugar and rum. But the part that interests me most, yes, go on. It was the number of shipwrecks off this cape. I began to wonder why people settled here. There were bad storms, and over there near Richmond Island, she pointed, is a ridge of rocks under the surface of the water near shore. It's called Watt's Ledge. I can just visualize fog and ships heading for Portland Harbor, getting off course and wrecking on it. Can't you? I suppose so. Sometimes I think you're not very imaginative, she said reproachfully. Maybe not, but isn't one of us in the family enough? He grinned at Lydia. Unfortunately, the day they had selected to spend out on the beach was cooler than anticipated. It's darn chilly out here without jackets, honey. Let's talk about all this back in the room. Better yet, we can go into the dining room and settle the seafaring history of Cape Elizabeth over a hot cup of coffee and dessert. Mark was beginning to unwind, and he knew that he had been working too hard. There never seemed to be any time left over for themselves. They went to bed about 10 o'clock, but he was unable to sleep. He always liked to walk while he thought about problems, and he was tempted to do so now. But where? At 11 o'clock, he got out of bed, pulled on a pair of chinos, a shirt, and his hooded red anorak. On impulse, he decided to go down to the ocean. What are you doing? Murmured Lydia sleepily. Dressing. I just want to walk for a while. Want me to come too? I won't be long. Why don't you go back to sleep? She closed her eyes. The noise of the surf drowned out the sound of his footsteps on the boardwalk. A heavy sea was running. A fog swirled over the dark, turbulent water. He felt its mist on his face. Mark was not much happier walking than he had been in bed trying to sleep. What time was it? Almost midnight, he thought. Lydia would be worried if he was gone too long. It was while he was trying to wipe off his glasses and check the luminous dial of his watch that he heard it, a sharp crack, followed by a noisy wrench of shattering spars and timbers. For a few seconds there was complete silence. Then the night was rent by a woman's screams. They came from across the water, but not far from shore. Loud shrieks floated toward them, those of women and children, their voices full of terror and the hoarse shouts of men. Mark strained his eyes, staring out to sea. He thought that he could pick out a dark masked silhouette dimly between billows of mist. His heart was pounding. A ship had struck Watt's Ledge. It was in the direction of Richmond Island, and the calls for help were terrible to hear. Mark raced across the sand to summon help. As he ran, he heard one last piercing cry from the direction of the water, the voice of a young woman. When he reached the boardwalk, he almost collided with a shadowy, hooded figure. "We've got to get help," he shouted breathlessly to whoever it was, but the figure moved to block his way. He tried to push past, when suddenly a beam of light almost blinded him. "Mark, it's me." Lydia was standing with a raincoat over her gown, shining a flashlight in his face. "What's the matter?" He caught her arm. "We've got to hurry. There's a wrecked ship close to shore." "How do you know?" "My God, can't you hear the screams?" he bellowed at her. "People are drowning out there." "I don't hear any screams, just the roar of the surf." The chorus of cries was ringing in his ears. "Mark, stand still for a minute. You're trembling." The cries were fainter and further away now. Why couldn't Lydia hear them? "I can't imagine what's happened to you. It has to be overwork," she said soothingly, as she put her arm through Mark's. Perhaps she was right, he thought. They walked back to the inn. "Your nerves are strung tight. Too many deadlines." She helped him off his clothes. "Can you sleep now?" "I think so," he did. And he did. He was utterly exhausted. The next morning, Lydia tactfully avoided mentioning the incident of the night before. They breakfasted on egg benedict with fresh lobster meat, and afterward, to her surprise, Mark suggested stopping by the library. "I just want to see their clipping file on shipwrecks," he explained. "So now you're the one who wants to go to libraries and look up history," said Lydia, as they entered Thomas Memorial Library. Mark opened a manila folder and began searching through a huge pile of clippings. "I think I've found it," said Mark. "Here's a story from March 1965 on shipwrecks of Costco Bay." The story was headlined, "Schooner Charles crashed on Watts Ledge in 1807. "Look at this. The date of the shipwreck was Sunday night, July 12th. It was a little before midnight when she hit the ledge and began to break up. 16 passengers drowned. It couldn't have been far from the beach. They were able to swim to shore. Have you seen the grave of the young woman who was coming back on the Charles from Boston? She was buying her trousseau," said the librarian. "Her gravestone is right near Crescent Beach. You should look at it before you leave the inn by the sea. You know, there has always been a romantic story about that wreck," volunteered an old man who stood listening with open curiosity. "In the years since it happened, people walking on the beach at night have sometimes reported hearing the sounds of a shipwreck and in terrible screams of drowning passengers. The schooner was in so close that the villagers at Cape Elizabeth heard the cries for help, and it made a deep impression on them. Remarkable story, isn't it?" "Yes, it is," said Mark, a peculiar look on his face. This did not fit in with any of his experience as a biology professor. He and Lydia found the gray slate marker at the girl's grave not far from the inn. It read in part, "Sacred to the memory of Miss Lydia Carver, age 24, who with 15 other unfortunate passengers perished in the merciless waves by the shipwreck of the schooner Charles on Sunday night, July 12th, 1807. "Yesterday was July 12th, said Mark thoughtfully, "and Sunday night." But Lydia hadn't heard. She gazed at the marker as if hypnotized. "Mark, do you notice how similar her name and mine are? They are almost the same. I was a Lydia Carver, too, except that my name was Lydia Carver Jordan. I even brought my trousseau in Boston just like she did." Lydia's face was pale and her eyes had filled with tears. "Poor girl," she said. "You're right. What a coincidence. I think she may have become a romantic figure after the wreck, and perhaps you were a namesake of hers." He remembered the frightened screams of the women he had heard the night before, and thought about the bereaved fiancé. He shivered as they stood there in the hot sun looking at the girl's grave. Could something have drawn his own Lydia here on this date? The past would never seem as remote to him again.
We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.